very special young women. And when I met you, I noticed immediately, which should have been very obvious to you, the three of us have something in common. Did you see it? I mean, you're the right height for your age, and I'm a little taller. In fact, you're just the right age for you, and I'm much older. And you're built perfectly. You're just the right weight for your age, and I am much not. You know what we have in common?
Wear glasses.
You wear glasses.
Don't you?
That's what we have in common. I did when I was your age. I was breaking them all the time. And that's what I do on Sundays here when I come. Where do you get your glasses? Do you know the name of the place you go? Lens crafters. Well, they're opticians. Because, yeah, opticians are the guys who fit your glasses. I'm a spiritual optician. I come here on the weekends, and I try to take the readings of the day, and I try to focus them on the lives of all the people who come. And I've got all sorts of people, from young to old, from all sorts of backgrounds. So that's why usually on Sunday it's all confused, because it's hard to focus on everybody at the same time. It's even hard to listen to one person sometimes, right? It's easy today. You know why it's easy? Because Andrea did this for me. First of all, he brought all of you here, which makes it much easier. And I see you, and I see the distances you've come, and the faith that you bring, and the lives that you've led. He also picked these readings, and I'm going to talk a lot about in just a minute. And then he lived his life. He lived his life in a very particular way, something that I was given a glimpse of by all of you when you shared his letters with me. Very clear where this soul was at. So let me begin at the beginning, the book of Genesis, the first in the Bible. He chose at first, as I said, these are Lenten readings. And they're very, very dense. They're a little tough to get into. That first reading about God calling Abraham, his only son, a very old man, Abraham, struggling to get up the mountain, with only one son, and the future of all humanity rests on the shoulders of that one son, Isaac. God calls them up on the mountain. He brings a knife and an altar, builds an altar of sacrifice. Because what Abraham knew of God is that God was an angry God. And God was a capricious God. And gods had to be appeased. Everyone in that ancient world knew that. Because they lived in fear. They lived in a world of randomness. They lived in a world that they didn't understand. We understand it much better. We know about cause and effect. We know about science and philosophy and all the things we've learned about this world and how it works. But their world was completely random. So God always needed to be bought off. That's what he assumed they were going up on the mountain to do. But God, when he pulls you up on the mountain, he pulls you up there for change. Always for change. And what changed in that moment for Abraham, for Isaac, for all the countless generations through to us is the relationship with our God changed. Not fear but love. Not sacrifice but self. He wanted to be in relationship with them and with their children who would be numerous as the stars in the sky. That's what changed. God brought us up to the mountaintop to be part of us, to be part of our lives. He understood that in the choices he made in his life. All of it of a piece, all of it a piece. He had a long life and a varied life and a life filled with all sorts of adventures, clearly. But they were all of a piece. They were all about being involved with God. All about understanding that relationship with God. St. Paul talks about it in the second reading. If God is for us, what can be against us? Nothing. And he didn't let much stand in his way, did he? I know what he did here. I know of what he did here. Everything he did in this parish had to do with real ministry, real service, real help to the homeless. My place close to my heart, I worked in hospitals for a dozen years. Hospital ministry among those who are most difficult to reach in hospitals, in psychiatric wards, in trouble. Homeless, helpless people, people in trouble, people who are sick, people who are in prison. The least and the lost and the forgotten. That's where God drew him. Those are the kind of relationships he wanted to bind. He wanted to heal people's relationship with God, allow people to be close to God so that they could know where God lived. God lives among us. How do I know? Because that's the best reading. That's the last reading. Jesus takes his closest friends up on the mountaintop, and they don't know what's going on because everything changed. Jesus didn't look like Jesus anymore. They saw God in his glory. They saw the closest glimpse of heaven that they would ever know until they went to heaven. They saw God face to face. They saw Moses and Elijah, the two great men of faith for them. They saw it all and understood not a bit. They saw it all and understood not a bit. Gee, this is a great thing. Why don't we put up some tents? Why don't we build an altar here? Why don't we do something? Jesus stood there. In the glory of God, the voice of God is heard. The voice of God is heard directly as it had never been heard before, as it will never be heard again. The voice of God the Father saying, "This is my Son." Don't you get it? Don't you understand how different this is? Don't you understand what this change means? This is my Son. Listen to him. Listen to him. That's what this day is about. That's what this life is about. Listening to God. Trying to seek God in the ordinary, in the everyday. In the things at the margins of our lives, and the things that many people find troublesome and hard to deal with. Seek God there. Seek God in the midst of relationship. Seek God's presence in the midst of someone in need. Seek God in your family, in your friends, in your church, in your life, by finding God in action. In the oldest language of the church, faith is ordered to action. When I'm trying to teach you guys, I say faith does something. Faith does something. It's a verb, not a noun. You get up and you move. That's what faith is. And in the oldest language of the church, grace builds on human nature. On this guy, grace was built. Again, to you guys, I say it's a verb, not a noun. Grace is God saving us, and we're helping God do that for everyone. That's who he was. That's what he did. That's how he lived and how he loved. That's what you saw in him and what you celebrate today. And that's why, in the words of the 23rd Psalm, we know where it happens. We know how this is. We know what comes next. Out of all of our life and out of all of our living, the end of the Psalm says, only grace, only mercy, only goodness, only kindness lasts. And that lives with God forever. We celebrate today a man of grace, a man of goodness, a man who in God's light shall live forever. God bless you all. Thank you for being with us. And I want to especially thank you and your family and friends who helped him through his last days. You did for him what we all should do for one another. Thank you for your love. Thank you for your care. Thank you for your grace. God bless you all.
Amen.